receiver in the NFL. I just really think he's going to be a great slot receiver. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's interesting you bring up that, and you mentioned the draft, and I kind of sideswiped my own point, guys, but we're not turning out, or the program is not turning out NFL-ready players anymore. Very, very few. And it's a little sad to see, because at one point this was one of the real go-to places, but now it's Bama. Look how many Michigan players got drafted over the week. Even 7th round. I mean, there were drafted going, where'd he go? Oh, he's to Michigan. Yeah, go ahead and take him. I don't care what he plays. He come from a winning program. Go ahead and take him. And I'm hoping that Miami can get back to that. Are there signs, Matt, that down the road and this program can get back to turning out more pro players than they have been? Because I'm trying to think of a truly great Miami football player in the last few years, and I'm struggling.
Well, they had the most recent first rounders were Jalen Phillips and Gregory Rousseau, but you're right. There's been a dearth of top level NFL talent consistently, for sure. And this was a prime example. You don't lose. You don't go 5-7 and 7-6 in a vacuum, right? You could see in this draft, Kim Kinchins went late 3rd round, and then they didn't have another pick till the 7th round, and that was Jaden Davis, who was a transfer pickup. They had a few transfer pickups who basically were in the draft. And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to supplement their roster with the transfer portal. And that's good and bad. If you want to try to win now and you get a lot of really good transfers like Florida State did last year, certainly you can win that year. But it's hard to say at this point it's sustainable, because in Miami's particular case, they're averaging about 13 to 15 transfers a year in the 3 years Mario's been in the transfer portal, which, unless, even if you're a one and done, that's taking 15 roster spots from potential freshmen in that class, because the last 2 years have been unlimited signees. So Mario's such a good recruiter. An argument can be made that he's really held the program back with some of these transfer takes. And I know that he wants to win now, and I understand that's why you take the transfer guys, but they haven't won now. So those 30 guys he took the last 2 years that are now gone, or mostly backups, there are some that are still here, that are certainly going to contribute, right? Akeem Messidor, they brought in obviously some transfers this year. We already talked about some of them who committed, and there's others across the board like Cam Ward, et cetera, who will help this year. But long term, if you believe in Mario Cristobal, the recruiter, and you believe in him developing NFL talent through recruiting, which if you look at this year's draft, a lot of those guys, actually the vast majority we looked at, it was 4- and 5-star guys in high school, and that's what Mario recruits, then that's how you build sustainable championship level team. That's how you build sustainable NFL top round talent. But if you just keep relying on the portal to suck up 15 of your roster spots every single year, it's just holding back those extra 10 guys, up to 15 guys every year that you could be taking and recruiting and developing over 2 to 4 to 5 year span, and then sending off to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round of the NFL. That'll help your team for multiple years instead of just one.
Yeah.
And something else, guys, that we didn't mention yet. Mario's practically the only constant the last few years. There's been an enormous turnover in the coaching staff. So these guys are getting mixed messages. You want to bring in a guy who's aligned with the head coach's philosophy, but you're still going to get a different message. You're going to run a different offense. You're going to have another offensive coordinator. You're going to have this position coaches change. This guy has left. This new guy comes in. It's hard to maintain a consistent message, even if you're trying to have the consistent message, because everybody has their own way. Everybody has their own book, their own philosophy. I came from this school. This is my mentor. This is my influence. So I'm going to bring some of that guy to work for the University of Miami. I think that's another reason you're not getting that development of the long-term players like that, is because you're having this tremendous amount of coaching turnover for whatever reasons, whether a guy finds a better gig or he gets fired. And here comes another, coach in a position that's on its 4th coach in 4 years. It's difficult.
I think a lot of it has to do with what I've heard over the last 5 or 6 months, and Matt, you can agree with me on this or not, is that some of these coaches are fed up with the NIL, the transfer portal. They just want to coach. They want to recruit and coach, and they don't want to be bothered with all this side mishigash over here. So they're going to the NFL, or they're retiring completely, or they're just fed up. They've had enough of the NIL, dealing with boosters as it was before the NIL, and they're tired of it, and they're just moving on to better opportunities, say in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not easy to be a college football coach or a college basketball coach right now, and you see some of the best just saying, "Forget it, I'm done," even though they're older guys. I would not love being a coach because coaching a college football team has always been somewhat of a combination of developing talent, dealing with personnel, being your fellow coaches, babysitting in some cases, depending on the student athlete, and then trying to win games and film prep and at the same time recruit. It's an impossible task. And really, you have to be okay with delegating a lot of responsibility to other people in your program. And a lot of head coaches don't like to do that. And when a lot of your time's being sucked up now by this NIL stuff and the transfer portal stuff and having to weed through different guys, it just makes it all that much more difficult. So it's not a fun job being a head coach right now in any college sport, in my opinion.
Before we get you out of here, because I promised I'd give you on, I let you wanted to be on for about a half hour. I heard the other day, besides Virginia, which they're doing what they want to do with the NIL, they're telling the NCAA to back off. We're going to do pretty much what we want. I also heard a certain state of Texas is now allowing their boosters to pay high school kids to play on certain teams in Texas high school football.
That's nothing new. It's down here too. It's just you don't hear it reported, and it's not legal. There are, I mean, I know for a fact there have been players who I know who've gotten paid to transfer schools in Florida. So I mean, you know, do they announce it on CNN and Fox News? Probably not, but it happens. You know, just because Texas is making it okay, let's just make this legal. I mean, the truth is, NIL was happening before NIL was officially happening, right? It was just schools were doing it illegally. And now it's just legal, which has increased the amount of money, increased the scrutiny, increased pretty much every aspect of being able to still pay players. So no, this is nothing that's just going on in states outside of Florida or anywhere else. You know, it's not just a Texas thing. It's just, you know, if a state wants to say, hey, let's just make it legal, they can do that. It's really not going to change anything because in Florida they're doing that anyway with some of these high school booster programs. You know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Matt, thank you so very much. He's Matt Shodell. He's from canesports.com. Please go on the website. You will find every speck of information you need. Dave was telling me about it earlier.
I just re-upped my subscription this morning, as a matter of fact. So,
You're the one who subscribed. I was wondering who that was.
I'm in. Yeah, you guys won't leave me for free, so I got to pay my $1 a month. So killing me.
And I just want to thank you so much, Matt. Matt will be joining us, I hope, in June when Dave comes back. And Matt, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Sure, anytime, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. That was interesting enough, this Mr. Lamont.
Well, you know what? We didn't even get into really little about Cam Ward, but we'll get into that as the year goes on. But
yeah,
we may have talked about this the last time you and I sat down. It's about time that University of Miami had a guy like that at quarterback. They have not had anybody close to a high caliber quarterback in a long time.
Well, they had hoped for, what's his name, who's now over at Wisconsin.
Right. And he had moments. And oddly enough, when your best year is your freshman year, that's not good. And, you know, that he just needed to get out, a change of scene. But he's another kid who's going to be working with another set of coaches. And he was kind of what I was referring to, Van Dyke, when I mentioned the constant turnover. You know, that's not easy. When I would talk to coaches, football coaches who maybe were in their second or third years as a coordinator someplace, they would say, you know, the first year, you don't bring out your whole offense. And he said, now, you know, coaches will tell you now in the second year, I can bring in more of what I'd like to teach because I know these guys, or maybe he's got some of the same holdovers, or he's got the same quarterback. With all the turnover at Miami, it's been next to impossible to do that. So Van Dyke was victimized a little bit by the revolving door of coordinators and head coaches. And that doesn't excuse everything, of course, because it still comes down ultimately to how you perform on the field and how well you're prepared. So, but Ward offers an athleticism and a danger to his game that we haven't seen before.
True.
And I mean, really haven't seen before. I mean, I'm trying to go through, even when Miami was killing people, they never had a quarterback like this, mobility-wise. Ken Dorsey.
Vinny couldn't move two steps to save his life.
Vinny moved college Vinny did. pro Vinny, no. College Vinny was okay. But your Walshes, your Ericksons, your Dorseys, guys
Kelly.
like that who were super successful and would go on to play, professionally, except for Ken, who never really got going. But the other guys at least saw some time in the NFL, and Jim Kelly did very well. But they were the Kozar. They were the old-fashioned QBs. Miami has kind of been playing catch-up for that. So Ward excites me for that reason alone. Rarely have you had, if ever, since George Myra, have you had a guy who could beat you on 3rd and 8 with his feet and not just his arm. So if 3rd and 8, you look down there and everybody's covered, he can tuck it and get that first down himself. That was always a problem. It has been for a long time. So that alone makes this Miami offense considerably
Yeah. I apologize, everybody. I have a little bit of a sinus thing working, and I'm coughing like crazy, and I do apologize. Dave Lamont joining us here on Main Street, my brother from another mother. I will always call him that. I love him dearly. He's a good man. We're going to talk baseball now, Mr. Oriole. By the way, I noticed you're not in your usual crib with the Oriole shirt off to the one side.
Oh, you know why? My wife is out of town, and I went in there to set up because that's where she works out of. And the power strip I needed is gone. So she must have taken it on her trip. So I looked down to plug in everything, and it's not there. And I can't. My computer has to be plugged in because otherwise I'll lose power in the middle of the show. So there was no place for me to plug in. Everything is boxed in. So I had to pick things up. And in the middle of doing all that, I get to this table, which is our dining room table, and I knock over the drink that I had here. So I had to go clean that up before I got everything settled in here. So no, you get the backup background here today because I wasn't aware that she was going to need the power strip for her road trip.
Yeah, she's something else. I'll tell you what. How many years you guys will be married next month now?
29.
Oh my God, I was married for 9, and that was about all I could stand.
Well, that may have worked both ways. I'm just saying.
No, I was in show business, and you know what that's like.
I was kind of too. Now you're different.
No, you were.
But no, she had had a little bit of a background in that, and her mom and stepdad, I should say, had a lot of background in it. So I think she understood what she was getting into.
Yeah. Baseball pitchers are going down left and right the first part of this season. Is it the rotation of the ball? Is it the speed of the ball? Are they being taught in the minors to be more aggressive, to throw everything you got 99 miles an hour fastballs all the time, or whatever the case may be? This new pitch, not necessarily a new pitch, but they call it the sweep. I mean, what is going on with all these pitchers going down for the season?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I could give you a better medical explanation for it, but you touched on a couple things. It seems like now if you can't hit 98, you're a nobody. You know, the days of the guys of the Maddoxes and people like that who could manipulate the pitches without what I call volume, but is velocity, without just trying to, wipe out a house with a fastball. I think that's part of it. I can't say I know enough about how these guys train in the off season. Some have criticized the year-round training and said, look, instead of doing that, why don't you take a little time off? But some guys were afraid to do that because, if you don't show up of course, baseball is one game where you can be a little bit out of shape and still get away with it. There's a lot of different things. I don't think it's the clock that people seem to like to blame. But again, I've never had these kinds of injuries, so I don't know. But I think my first instinct is it's just the velocities are insane now. And the things I've never quite understood. Some of these guys, bullpen guys, are almost throwing full games warming up.
Yes.
I'm amazed by that. And unless it's an emergency or if somebody gets hurt, you got to throw a guy out there unexpectedly, or if somebody's just getting the dog do beat out of them and they got to go, and you don't have as much time. But you watch these guys warm up, and they're just constantly warming up. And I don't know they're not lobbing it in; they're throwing their repertoire. Mm-hmm. And I understand you have to have some of that to feel loose to get out there. It reminds me of a story. This is not a sports story, but it's a music story. It's Robert Plant, who's the lead singer for Led Zeppelin and is still active in his mid-70s.
God rest his soul.
Was not dead, but
well, yeah.
Go on. Go ahead, get it out.
No. It's just I saw him on TV. He's walking around with that, and I like
He's
Plant.
Still active, in case you're wondering. And he was, I forgot, it didn't say what artist. He's backstage and he's with somebody he must know, and I don't know who it was. And the guy's going through this tortured vocal warm-up. I mean, this demanding warm-up to get ready for a show. And Plant goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I'm warming up." He says, "You got to save some for the show, man."
Yeah.
And I guess he's not a guy who does all this egg warming up beforehand. And I wonder if that's some of it too for the pitchers. You got to save some of it for when you actually go out to pitch in the line of fire. I'm always blown away by that. I'm blown away by when I watch, you mentioned bowling. We joke around that bowling is the only sport that has pre-practice practice to practice, and then you're going to practice again. And then some days before a tournament is over, before they have this position round, when they take a few extra minutes to calculate what positions you're going to be bowling in and like 1 versus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, then they practice again for 5 minutes. They're like, at some point, now I know there's a whole science to how you break down and practice, and it's a little bit different than baseball in that in baseball, you're not affecting the outcome of the game with your practice, whereas in bowling, you can affect your opponent. You can screw somebody up by doing certain things to a lane. But still, I wonder, and I see these guys putting new skin on their thumbs and bloody fingers here and ripped nails. I'm like, maybe a few fewer throws would be a bad idea.
Yeah. And if you also notice over the last 5, 6, 7 years, remember when we were kids, pitchers would go into the 8th and 9th.
Oh, it's been longer than
11th
that.
inning. Yeah. I mean, I can remember Jim Bunning and Chris Short, the year my Phillies blew it in the National League in '64. You were just a little youngman.
Yeah, you're way older than I am.
Yeah. And I can remember when they blew it, and it was just Chris Short, Jim Bunning, Chris Short, Jim Bunning. Yeah. And they were pitching 8 and 9. And there wasn't such a thing as relievers. All right, the Phillies had a guy named Bo Belinsky and Dallas Green as relievers.
Your MVP, but what year did they win with Jim Constantine? He was the MVP, and he was a reliever.
Oh, God.
Was that 64?
No, that was the Cardinals. But anyway. No, they blew it, and the Cardinals won it all.
Right. But anyway, to your point, I'll say this. I think also several things. Number one, the Phillies weren't worth the money they are now. The players aren't worth the money, weren't worth the money in the Jim Bunning, Chris Short days than they're getting now. They're more commodities than people. They're contracts. And there's this great risk of, well, if we throw it out there, we've just spent all this money developing this guy. We drafted him or we traded for him. We paid him a very hefty salary, or we've worked with him from, like our Dominican scouting department worked with him, and we brought him to this level and this level and this level and this level, and now here we go. And why does his arm fall off? Why does that happen? I think that's part of it. There's more caution because there's more money. Physically, I guess guys are training different. And something else, Gary, I don't know if anybody ever brings up. And I'm not saying that things are better now or anything like that. How many of those guys do you think were pitching hurt?
Yeah.
Pitching with ailments that today would be diagnosed, and then a guy would go on the injured list or be shelved for a couple of months or maybe even have surgery. I would bet not conservatively, and again, I'm guessing, there's a decent number of guys who pitched hurt.
Yeah, and the same
today. I'm not talking about, again, something dangling. I'm talking about an injury that nowadays would be diagnosed, and they go, okay, you know what, buddy, we're going to shut you down for a month. Come back and see us when that inflammation goes away.
Yeah, because back then, like in pro football, I know when my brother played, if you didn't play, your pay was cut in half. If you were on the injured list, you weren't getting your full salary, which wasn't a whole heck of a lot anyway to begin with.
Especially bad in football.
Oh yeah.
I mean, guaranteed contracts aren't like they are in baseball. You get to a certain point, you're fine. Or the NBA, you get to a certain point, you're fine. In football, unless you're a superstar, and I mean a real superstar, your guarantee is non-existent.
Yeah. I mean, my brother first round draft pick. He didn't make a whole cup. I think his contract was 30,000 plus a little bit of a bonus, and he was only 10,000 below what Johnny Unitas was making. So I mean, yeah, they played hurt because they had to put money, they had to put food on the table, and if they didn't play, they weren't getting the kind of money that they wanted to get. So that probably plays into it an awful lot. Boy, I'm glad to see your Orioles are still hot. They're still good. My Phillies are playing great ball.
They're good.
The Yankees are playing good ball.
Craig Kimbrell could be the guy who takes them down from the inside. He blew 2 saves over the weekend, but the rest of the team, there's some incredibly exciting young players, and they did send Jackson Holliday down after all the hype of bringing him up, but he was not performing. And the Orioles are in a position now where 5 years ago, Jackson Holliday might still be there, and he'd end up batting 100 for the year, and you destroy the kid. Now they can afford to bring him up. Oh, he's not quite ready yet after all, and send him down and still be good. So I'm okay with that. Disappointed with the weekend, but it's a long season. And they got a big series with New York, and the Yankees look good, so it ought to be a very exciting few games. Dave
Lamont joining us here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you as we are all the time. Glad to see you're all with us, and we'll be happy to. This program will be posted in a couple of days, so it ought to be cool. What was I going to say? Oh, the Marlins. Boy, I'll tell you what. Last year they made the playoffs. They were doing great. They let go of their GM. I don't know why they let her go, but
power struggle.
Yeah, and now they can't seem to do anything.
I guess they felt like they were not. Under her, Kim Ng, that they were not set up for the long term as well as they wanted to be. That's what I've read. And they wanted to bring in somebody either as a superior to her or at least an equal, and she wanted no part of that, and I don't blame her. She built, it was so funny to hear, for those who don't know, if there's anybody watching this who doesn't know the sordid history of the Marlins, they, with the World Series titles have come twice the pain than the joy. And it's a very cynical fan base, and it has a right to be. And so, yes, they were a playoff team last year, but, it's much easier to make the playoffs, and they weren't that good. They didn't have much offense, but she made a couple of moves that helped. They brought in a power hitter that they needed, and he worked out. Berger worked out very well. It was a nice trade. She clearly knew what she was doing, but there was this struggle, and I don't blame her for checking out. And,
I mean,
but the irony is they're worried about the long term. Like, buddy, your short term wasn't all that terrible. Now, to be fair to them, they are missing some key arms. With what is it, Gary? Injuries.
Yes. And they unfortunately in the playoffs they met a buzzsaw called the Philadelphia Phillies, who were just hitting everything that moved until they weren't, and then that ended for them. By the way, I wanted to say Kimbrell was the reason I think we didn't win the World Series last year when he was with the Phillies.
It's funny. Nobody really wanted him, and the Orioles with Bautista out with a injury. And what was he throwing? 101. They needed somebody. And the problem that hurt him last year is once he went out, the bullpen was out of balance. Yeah. So they thought they bring in a guy who's had some success, and he blew a save opening day, and he's blown 2 of the last 3. After that, he actually had a nice little run. So let's hope that settles. And, we'll see what happens until Bautista can come back, I assume, for the 2025 season. But it's a delicate balance. The American League, both leagues are very competitive. Cleveland is surprising everybody by being good. The Yankees with Soto and with Judge hitting miserably, you'd think that would really kill them, but it's not. Tampa is still always going to be tough. So there are some respectable. The Astros are awful at the moment, but something tells me they're going to get back to respectability. And in the National League, it's the Braves and Dodgers.
Or my Phils.
Phillies are good too. The Phillies are still solid. So all 3 of those teams will probably be in the playoffs.
Real quick before we switch gears over to the NBA, I always thought the Marlins would have been better off going into the American League.
Never thought of it, honestly. I think they would have been better off playing in a different location. Not
how do you really
out of
Dave? How do you really feel, my brother? How do you feel?
South Florida, but you know what? On the other hand, you could put that stadium just about anywhere, and if you gave people a reason to come to the games, winning, then they will. I remember, years when they had some competitive teams going there, and it was a tougher ticket. It's a pretty easy ticket right now, and I don't think that ballpark is that bad. It's a pain for some people to get to, and I understand they want to do the whole Miami thing, like the MLS team wants to do and will do. Okay, fine. I'm still parking in a guy's front yard when I go to games, like it was going to see the Dolphins and the Oilers on Monday night. But I still think it might have been better to find another place to put that ballpark. But having said that, you can put butts in seats when you're good.
I always had hoped that instead of building that baseball stadium, they would have built a more improved OB and let it be. That ground is sacrosanct.
It is for old people like us.
Yeah,
it's not anymore for generation or a generation and a half that's grown up with mediocre Miami football and never went to a game in the Orange Bowl. Yeah. And if you remember, the program started fading while the Orange Bowl was still around. And then Hurricane Wilma comes, and you have a stadium with half of it condemned. You cannot go on. And I listen, the city of Miami is fairly corrupt, but they may have made a smart business decision by not paying for the tear down and a rebuild. Yeah. And again, you brought this up yourself when Matt was on, the size of the University of Miami. If every single student who's enrolled at the University of Miami took up seats at Hard Rock Stadium, that's what, 8,900?
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Well, if every single student at Ohio State went to a game, you're talking about 60,000.
Yeah.
We're in that's just how this is. So I don't know. I don't think you're totally dead wrong. I just think that we have this opinion of the Orange Bowl because there was so much success there. Not just the Hurricanes, but the Dolphins.
We
loved it because you were winning, but otherwise the place was pathetic.
No, but what I mean is, and maybe I'm a nostalgic kind of person.
So am I.
But I mean, I remember being in that stadium for Super Bowl III on the sidelines when they played the Jets.
Older. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember being there before we were any good at the U.
Yeah. Before you wasn't. Even started. I had not moved. Well, we moved here in the mid '70s, and I didn't start. I only went to Miami for my last 2 years of college, so I went to a couple of games, and they were just, it was post Saban into the early days of Howard. So getting good was on the horizon. We just didn't know it. Yeah. We didn't quite know what we had with him and what was going to happen afterwards, of course. So there's all that. I completely get the nostalgia part of it. I'm extremely like that. I think you and I have that in common. But I'm also being a little more practical and hard-edged now that I don't know if a revamped Orange Bowl, because you couldn't have had the Marlins play at Hard Rock. That was unsustainable.
Yeah.
So you would have had to either move them to Broward, which they didn't want to do. Palm Beach, they didn't want to do. So on the surface, that site wasn't the dumbest idea ever. It's just not working out because the team, for the most part, isn't holding up its end of the bargain.
It stinks. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Let's switch gears here in the last about 5 to 10 minutes that we have. The NBA, before we get to the Heat and the Boston Celtics, are we seeing the finality of the regime of the Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers as we know them now?
Oh, hell yeah. I was surprised that Denver lost game 4, frankly. They had beaten the Lakers about 150 in a row. And I assume that they will win the series, whether it takes 5 or 6. They're the better team. They have the best player in the league right now. And with the Warriors, they ran out of gas a year ago. The whole thing started to chip away when Thompson got hurt. I mean, Curry, as magnificent as he is, just cannot do all of this by himself. Draymond Green is relatively useless. He is. I mean, he's just not the same player.
I don't disagree.
5 or 6 years ago, when they were humping and they were the best thing going, and either getting the finals and losing or getting the finals and winning, Draymond Green was an incredibly valuable guy for them because of his defensive ability, to the point where he was almost Rodman-like in that you didn't have to have Draymond Green score points to affect the game positively for you. Well, that's different now. Now he seems to affect the game. His attitude seems to be questionable at times. He gets into these beefs with officials. He's become, I think, more of a
he's an
burden than
irritant.
anything else. Right. So the Warriors are going to be in for a difficult future, even if because Klay Thompson clearly isn't the guy he was, and they keep saying they want him. I'm amazed that Steve Kerr still hangs around. I would think at some point he's going to want to improve the quality of his life and get out of there. I'm not sure. And I don't think Steve Kerr's a guy, doesn't strike me as a guy who's doing this, I'm going to get paid. I think he does it because he genuinely loves to coach. But yes, the short answer to your question is 100%. The Lakers, LeBron, as great as he is, Davis can't always be counted on. And the rest of the team is
I think LeBron is, after a while, all those playoff games and exhibition games and everything else, I think LeBron has had it. I think his body's telling him stop, but his mind is going, no, I can't stop. I have
he
pride
still
about
has great days. He still has games where he can dominate a game. It's just less often.
Yeah. Okay. Tonight, game 5 in Miami.
4.
This is game 4. Okay. Yes, it's game 4. Yes. Thank you. I was never good at math. You know that. Game 4. Boston took it to him. You keep saying, and I keep hearing from people, and I keep saying they're not going to shoot the lights out the Heat like they did in game 2.
No.
The Heat are going to come at them, and Boston's going to need to somehow weather the storm for the first 5-10 minutes because the Heat are going to come at them with everything they've got because this is do or die. If they go up to Boston 3-1, ineffectively it's over with because Boston will take it at home. But what do you see for tonight? How do you see this unfolding?
That's a good point. I think Boston's got to win the first 6 minutes of the first quarter. Miami isn't going to make 23 threes again. That's unsustainable. It was a bit of a fluke, frankly. Boston is better, and the Heat is missing the guy who could overcome anything in Jimmy Butler. And even though they've got some fine players, they don't have the guy who clearly is the leader of the team. So when you're shorthanded like that, it's like the Bucks without Giannis. I mean, Indiana has them on the ropes. Well, why? Well, part of it is I think Milwaukee screwed up by firing their coach and bringing in Doc Rivers, and they haven't been the same sense. But that's not all of it. You take your best player out of the game, and it's an unfair advantage.
Right.
Same with the Celtics. The Celtics are, I think, a little tougher this year, and I just think there's and I like how they came back in Game 3. I didn't like what I saw from them in Game 2, which was once they got behind, they got real bitchy with the officials. It seemed like everything bothered them. And I looked at that, and then Stan Van Gundy mentioned it on the broadcast on TNT. Like he hated what he saw from them, that he thought their whole attitude, because they weren't used to being in that position. It hadn't happened very often, and they handled it poorly. So I would assume that they had that talk before Game 3. Now this time, obviously, Game 3, they pretty much put that in the refrigerator, as Chick Hearn would say, early enough that dude didn't have to worry about it. And I think your analysis is pretty spot on. I think Miami is going to be forced to try to make another 23 threes to have a shot at this. But long term, without Jimmy Butler, the better team will prevail. And I do think it's going to be Boston, whether it takes them 5 or 6.
Yeah. You know what I was really surprised about, Dave, when they panned the stadium the other day, there were a lot of empty seats, a ton of empty seats.
When they do it early before the second quarter or before the fourth, I don't know what it is. I went to a game there February or March, and it takes a while to get in because of security measures, which everybody does. I understand. I'm not complaining about that. Parking can be difficult, and there's a lot of people walking from parking lots that are a block or 2 away, plus the traffic. This is a Monday game, so you're going to have rush hour traffic going in and coming out. So that's going to add to some of your headaches. And it is a reputation of Miami crowds to arrive late and leave early. So I never judge a Heat crowd until at least halfway through the first quarter or the beginning of the second. I think you will, and those are some good expensive seats, Gary, that they're panning that are still red. and I think this year there is a little bit of a skepticism about the team too, that it's just been kind of a mediocre regular season, which it was last year. And without Butler, I think a lot of people are figuring, come on, we're not going to get anywhere.
It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping the Celtics will take it far. They should sweep the series. They really should have swept this thing to begin with, but unfortunately they didn't. So only time will tell. Dave, we have come to the end of another hour. And I just want to say thank you to you. You're going to be back in June. I can't remember the exact date. I think it's
neither can I, but I think we did figure something out. I've got it down. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we've got it down towards the end of June. See if Matt will join us, or Joe Casal, another dear friend of ours.
Yeah, Joe would be great to have on. May, I think, I don't know what you said. You had more important people to bring on in May. So
I didn't say that at all.
I'm pretty sure that's what I wrote down. That I have actual people who count, and so we'll see you in June.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is my brother from another mother, and I love him with all my heart. I hope you have a wonderful time in New Orleans with a beautiful young woman who is bride to this very day, and I wish you nothing but happiness for another 29 years.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you very, very soon.
Okay.
All right. And until we meet again, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.